Hello and good morning, everyone. OnlyPositivity here. I have my coffee with me, ready to explore this new phase of life with you all. So over the past few years, I have gained a whole new perspective on life, and I've realized that life is too short to not be enjoying yourself while doing great things. So come along with me as I explore this new lens through fitness, photography, reading, traveling, cannabis, and much more. Looking forward to the journey, guys. And remember, only positivity. Yeah, dude. I was talking to my fiance about our conversation, this evening and things like that. And she's like, who's Henry, man? Who's Henry? And I was like, oh, we go way back. You don't even know. Yeah. And so then they got me kind of just chatting and thinking about some of the ways that we used to connect growing up. You know what I mean? And I know we spent a lot of time. We were right along that line of like best friends at one point, you know what I mean? And grew up playing soccer together, school stuff. But I think, one thing that I noticed was I was in chorus, right, for a little bit. But I kind of fell off that wagon. I just didn't have the knack for it. I didn't have the passion for it. But you seem to always have it, and you seem to always kind of be like unapologetically yourself as we were going through school and playing soccer and things of that sort. So that's the way I see it up until the way we kind of like parted paths, right? So that was probably around maybe sophomore year of high school and things like that. But at the start, I'd be interested to hear what started you off on this path that you're on now, because it's very interesting to me. I haven't caught up with you in a while, but I'm so happy to hear it, man.
Yeah. My mom kind of forced me to join choir in the fourth grade, and then I ended up really enjoying it and falling in love with singing specifically and doing choral music. And then that kind of turned into just a love of performing and being on stage. And then I didn't really take acting super seriously until probably high school, like when you said, because obviously soccer was a main focus for a lot of my childhood. And then it gets to that point in high school, where you have to really decide. And unlike middle school, where you can kind of do everything a little bit at a time, you have to really kind of start honing in high school. And it was junior year of high school when I got cast as Tony in West Side Story at Waubonsie.
Yeah.
Just the opening night of that show, I just remember being on stage and being like, I love this more than anything else. I want to keep doing everything I can to follow this feeling and keep chasing after it. And I was fortunate to get accepted into a couple different college programs for musical theater. I went to the one that, was the best option for me in Chicago. I kind of wanted a program that would allow me to start working while I was still in school and do shows in Chicago. And Roosevelt offered that. So I was able to kind of get a bit of a head start in terms of starting my career in the Chicago theater community before graduating.
Sure. And were you at the Roosevelt that's in the Loop?
Yeah. So I actually lived downtown on State Street in Congress for the first 2 years of school, and then I ended up moving north to Lincoln Park. But yeah, that's the building. It's right the center of downtown.
Yeah, right where that Panera it still used to be, right? I don't know if it's still there anymore, but
yeah, I think Panera is still there. I'm not sure. I mean, I haven't been down there in a while.
It's funny, man. I'm surprised we didn't connect earlier because I went to DePaul. I was right across the way, right? I was a block over.
Oh yeah.
And I lived in Lincoln Park my freshman year and lived in Wrigley for the remainder of college. Yeah. So we were running kind of in the same areas, I'm surprised we never ran into each other or anything like that.
That's wild. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it is a very closed group in theater school and just being at a conservatory in general. it's kind of cliquey a little bit,
Sure.
but like, I mean, it's kind of the same in terms of us like kind of going on separate paths. It's kind of been the same with like a lot of my friends from high school. Like, I know a number of people like went to school together, and like I know I was actually just at Cole Anderson's bachelor party.
I did see a picture of that, man. That looked like a
Yeah.
good time.
And
Dude, was Johnny Ackle there?
Johnny Ackle was there. Yeah,
What
yeah.
a
It was a
guy,
lot.
dude.
It was fun reconnecting. But yeah, like though a lot of those guys went to school together and like are still best buds and hang out all the time, which is really cool. I pop in here and there, but like I don't unfortunately see those guys as often as back in the day. But what's really cool is like just reconnecting. It's like time has passed, but nothing's changed. Still the same. Still the same.
Yeah, that's
guys.
always nice. It's always nice. I mean, I actually had connected with Cole a couple of years ago, like, because I think he was doing recruiting for a little bit.
Yeah.
So it was really nice to reconnect with him, and I think us three were actually trying to meet up, but just schedules didn't work out and things like that.
Yeah.
But like you said, it's just you kind of pick back up where you left off, and that restores a little faith in humanity for you right there, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, yeah, it's just so great. It's so great. There's so many memories, and it's cool to make new ones moving forward.
Yeah, man. So going back to your first performance in West Side Story, take me through that a little bit deeper. Like what was it about the act of prepping and then performing that really sparked your interest? If you can go down there with me.
It just combines so many elements of different things that I love. I've always been kind of intrigued by like acting in general growing up. Like it was always something that looked really glamorous, and I don't know, I think there's a part of everyone who kind of wants to be a movie star or something like that,
Totally.
So that's kind of always been like something that I don't know, kind of fantasized about when I was growing up, and then I don't know, feeling like the spotlight on you and getting to combine elements of like dance and singing and acting all at once. It kind of just was like the perfect culmination of things that I absolutely love. Like I never really thought that, because I didn't go and see a ton of musicals or anything like that when I was growing up. Like my mom would take me to shows, but it wasn't anything that I ever thought like, oh, like that's it right there. Like that's the thing that I'm meant to be doing. But it wasn't until I was like actually the lead role in this show that I was like, oh my gosh, like this feeling is so unlike anything else. Cause like I've always loved like kind of the pressure element of like team sports and stuff like that. I think that's something that I've kind of found about theater that I super love, is that it's similarly, like a high stakes situation. There's a lot of pressure, but it's good pressure to be the best that you can be and push yourself. And yeah, I don't know. I don't have enough words to describe it. I just really, it fills this like this part of me that I didn't know was empty before.
Yeah. One of the reasons I think about that, and as I was prepping for this conversation, I want to say maybe back in like 2012 or 2013, we had ran into each other at like the Eola Fitness Center, right?
Oh yeah.
And right down on the old Eola Community Center, and I think your dad had lived in the same neighborhood like as my parents did for a stint.
Yeah.
And I think maybe you were working out there, right? So I had approached you, and we had a quick chat, and we were like, hey, what are we up to these days? We were just catching up real briefly, and you had told me briefly about how you're pursuing an acting career. And the way you had said it was, it's the only thing that's like really making me happy, right? And maybe this is me just making an assumption here. It seemed like there might have been some pushback as to your career choice, right? I felt that in your voice, and it still resonates with me today, right? Yeah. And what I'm interested here is is about that. Like, because, acting is for lack of a better term, maybe a risky career, right? You don't know exactly how it's going to pan out. But, take me through maybe some of the pushback that you got from people as you were breaking into your own and you were deciding that, no, you know what? Acting is my thing.
Yeah, I mean, it started out from even the first time I made the conscious decision that like I wanted to go to college. I wanted to study this in school. I remember like I got into multiple different college programs and was very fortunate to get a pretty good scholarship. And even with all of that, I remember like just telling teachers what I was going to go study, and so many of them were like, "Oh, that's great. What's your backup plan?" And like even there, I was like, "Wow, thanks for having like I don't know faith in me or like any kind of belief that I can go and do great things." And then, I mean, you just hear it over and over, especially going to theater school. All of the professors would be like, if there is anything else that you love doing, go do that. Because this business is really brutal and really hard. And it definitely is that. Like, it's incredibly challenging at times, It doesn't matter who you are, like, nobody has like a stellar batting average. Like I audition for hundreds of projects and I book like a handful of them. So it's constantly looking for the next gig, especially like in the Chicago theater community. The runs and the shows are like shorter. It's generally like a 3-month contract. So you're constantly looking for the next thing until you get like a big break, which I was fortunate to get with Book of Mormon.
Nice. Congrats, by the way.
Thank you. I mean, that was my first time having a job that was more than like 3 months. I was like finally on this show that was open-ended for the most part. That's very rare for live theater performers. And when you get them, those dream jobs, you really hang on to them.
Yep.
So I was on tour for just about 2 years.
That long, huh?
Yeah, I started in the spring of 2018. But like, so there are all of these lows in show business, but those few highs are so stellar that it like really makes up for it in my mind. I may feel differently like when I'm older and don't want to keep doing the grind. I've always kind of thought about like pursuing teaching or something. I'd love to like share what I've learned about acting and this craft with other younger people who are starting out. Just to have that kind of stability. But at the moment, like I still love performing more than anything. So I'm still chasing after that. Haley and I are actually moving to New York in September, which is exciting, terrifying, but like it's time. It was kind of on our plan to our like 5-year plan post tour to move out there, which got delayed because of the pandemic. It wasn't a great time to be moving to a new city, a big city.
Especially New York, man.
But
they had it bad over there.
But now seems like the right time. I mean, it's kind of a level playing field. The entire industry has been down for the past year, so there's a lot of new shows coming in to the shows that unfortunately the theaters that unfortunately had to close the shows that we're currently running. So there's going to be a lot of auditions happening in my future.
Well done.
There already are.
I'm happy for you.
I know we've had to reschedule this a couple times because it's been a pretty busy audition season. But
hey, man, that's good news, though, right? We could do this anytime, and I'm happy those things are coming back in for you, dude.
Thanks, man.
No, of course, and it's interesting because when. And not to make it about myself, it's like, I come from like this Indian family, right? So it's like you go to college, you get a job, you have a family, right? Like you do all these things, and there was always something about it that I was like, no, that's not for me, right? Like I don't jive with that. Like, and as of late, it took like a global pandemic for me to like sit back and be like, I want something more passionate from my life. You know what I mean? Like I want to chase that feeling that you're chasing, right? That you're describing to me. You can't really articulate it, but it's bringing you this fulfillment that you can't put your finger on, right? And we all have our own races that we're running in life, but I'd be remiss if I didn't just like do something that really made me smile, right? Really made my heart warm. And that's the main reason I even reached out to you in the first place, because we haven't even talked in years, but your enthusiasm is carrying through in your social media and everything that you're doing, man. So I can completely resonate with your hustle. And
Thanks,
it
man.
seems like you're trying to, of course, dude. It seems like you're trying to plan out. And it's interesting to me because it seems like, and I don't know the industry, it seems like auditions might be fleeting, right? They might be coming and going, but you're still somehow able to plan, right? You're still able to say like, hey, here's my 5-year plan. And I'd just be interested to hear how you do that with, is it a lot of pivot on the fly? Like what goes through your mind as you're planning out your future?
Yeah, I mean, I do this thing where I kind of set goals for myself. Really at the start of each year, it's like by this time I want to, have a lead role in a show in Chicago. And then once that happens, I set the bar a little bit higher. Like I want to join Actors Equity, which is the actors union. I want to get a show that allows me to join it's called EMC, the Equity Membership Candidate Program, where you're basically accruing points to be eligible to join the union. Okay. So like that was a goal of mine, was to get my first EMC show working at an equity theater, and then like just getting bigger and bigger projects, having like specific theaters that I wanted to work at in Chicago. Mm-hmm. And then kind of at that same time, I was always thinking I really want to book a national tour. I really want to get in Broadway. Like that was the ultimate goal, but I kind of set the bar. I mean, like that was the high bar, but I was setting smaller rungs along the way. And, I was very fortunate to achieve and make most of those goals as I went along. I tried to be as practical as possible, but also ambitious. Yeah. And then, it kind of just all led me to where I was and where I am now. Just constantly reaching for the next big thing and setting plans. It's pretty hard with this industry to plan more than a year out, just because, you don't even know what shows are going to be getting produced in a year's time. But I think setting those goals is a good way of like tracking and charting your progress as you pursue what makes you happier than anything else. I hope I answered the question.
No, that's good. I just am always interested to hear as to how people like framework their lives, right? Like we're approaching our 30s now and things like that. And,
oh my gosh,
dude, like don't even remind me. I apologize for bringing that up, dude.
It's coming.
Yeah, right. So it's interesting how people are what they're deciding to do now, right? People are settling down, having kids. They're getting into their comfortable situations, and for me, it's just not the path, right? Like I don't seek comfort all the time. I want to put myself in situations where I'm gonna be a little uncomfortable because I'm gonna learn from that. Right, I'm gonna gain something from it, and I find myself maybe a little bit different from those folks, and I like to connect with like-minded individuals that are still pursuing themselves, right? Like they're still exploring themselves and things like that, which again led me to connect with you, right? And as we come to the Book of Mormon. I did go see that play, like, I think it was probably before you were involved in it. Like, it was probably like 2013, 2014, out at the theater that's on Monroe. I don't remember the name of that theater. Do you know at the top of your head?
Yeah, I think it's the Bank of America Theater. That's where
Correct.
it
Yep.
started.
Yeah.
That was
So,
actually the tour that I ended up joining.
oh,
So that our tour, it's called the Jumemosi Tour. It's the
okay.
second national Book of Mormon tour. It originated at the Bank of America Theater in downtown Chicago, which is probably where you saw it.
Yeah.
And then after sitting down, I think they were here for 11 months the first time. And then it turned into a tour, and they started going from city to city. And then
Yeah.
I hopped onto that in 2018.
Okay, perfect. And if I can say, man, that's a perfect role, a perfect spot for you. Growing up, you were always a funny guy, witty dude, you know what I mean, animated and things like that. And I don't know the exact role you played, but just the entire production of it is right up your alley, my man. So I mean,
Oh.
I'm sure you did a wonderful job. I wish I could have came and saw you.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I remember I actually saw it when it was sitting down there, and it opened in Chicago as well. And I was still in theater school at the time. And I just remember looking up at the show and being like, I have to be in that. There's not a show that I'm
Yeah.
more perfect for. It's like they had me in mind when they were writing it. I don't know what it is. So yeah, I started auditioning for it when I was still in school. I had my first callback out in New York for it. My senior year, I actually had to like miss a few days of school to go to this callback, and I was so sure I was gonna book it and get famous right away.
Right.
And it didn't happen. For whatever reason, I feel like I was very green at the time. I had worked at a handful of theaters, but I didn't have, the experience, the tap dance skill that is required of the show. So I kind of set that as that high bar. Like, I'm going to be in the Book of Mormon at some point. It's not a matter of if it's going to happen. It's a matter of when. I just need to keep showing up. And yeah, I auditioned for like 5 years. Just kept going in. It got to the point where like the casting directors would come into the Chicago auditions and be like, "Hey, Henry." I'm like, "Hey, good to see you again. Still here trying to get into your show." And then, yeah, it finally clicked. The right part opened up, and I went back to callbacks again, and part of me didn't want to go because I'd been auditioning for it so many times, and
Yeah.
it was over like Easter weekend, and I had a flight booked to Texas to be with family, and then I got the call back, and my mom's like, "You have to go."
Yeah.
And I'm glad I
Yep.
did. It finally happened. And yeah, all of that work I'd been putting in for 5 years specifically towards getting into that show paid off.
Well done, man.
Thank you. Yeah, the part that I played, I was actually the swing in that production, and a swing in a Broadway musical is essentially the person who makes sure the show happens every night.
Okay.
Because I covered 8 different, we call them tracks, but it's essentially one person's entire show. So like if one cast member gets sick, then I would get the call and go on that evening. Or if someone went on vacation, I'd fill in for them for the week. But like a lot of times I would play one track in the afternoon of a matinee and then a different one in the evening performance based on like people coming and going and all of that. So it was a lot of it was the hardest thing I've ever done by a lot. It was so stressful but exhilarating, and I remember when I finally got the call that I had booked it, I was like, "Are y'all sure? Like, how am I gonna do this?" And then yeah, it was really hard. It was really, really hard. Hardest experience of my life, but definitely the most fulfilling. And because I was a swing and had a different set of circumstances every single time I went on, it kept it super fresh. And like, I did the show over 200 times, and every time was equally exciting.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
How do you manage that? How do you manage knowing so many different lines, so many different parts? And I'm sure like you have to get into a various set of characteristics, right? Like you have
Yeah.
to maybe tone it down, turn it up, become a little bit more reserved. How do you manage all these things?
So that is a great question. I
I
didn't really have the
don't know.
experience of swinging before.
Sure.
So I kind of like asked the other swings, like what worked for them. There's like
Okay.
this app on your on an iPad called Stage Right that I used, where you can basically use little like icons as the different characters, and then put it on the stage, like a picture of the layout of the stage,
Yeah, yeah,
basically the
yeah.
blueprint, and like what different set pieces are on there, and you can move them around. So I had like very detailed scene by scene, like who stands where when they move on what line, like what the stage picture looks like for choreography. And then I had a set of note cards for each of the different tracks with very detailed notes on like when they say what lines,
Okay.
like the cue line before they say their line, what vocal part they sing, because you need to know like the specific vocal line that they sing for each song as well. What props they bring on, what side of the stage you exit, what costume pieces they have for specific numbers, and what wing you have to exit to get to your quick change and all of that. So if I would get the call that I was on for, the Elder Young track, I would pull that out of my little makeup bin and then
Okay.
just like briefly go over it before I'd go on stage. And if I was performing for one track, enough consecutive nights or performances, it got to a point where I didn't really need to use the note cards.
Okay.
There were a handful of tracks that like I went on for pretty often for whatever reason, and those I didn't really need note cards for. But there were a handful that like for whatever reason the guys never called out. So like there was one track in particular that I only did like 2 or 3 times in my whole 2 years. So when I'd get that call, I'm like, oh, I really need to look at these note cards. But it was a nice tool to have, just to have like this set of paper that,
Yeah.
and there's enough downtime backstage to like quickly look at those notes, be like, oh, okay, they're singing this vocal line, exiting the stage on this line, have these different costume elements, bring on these props and whatnot.
Wow. Okay, man. Hey, I see you trying to simplify it, but that seems very complicated, man.
Yeah.
It seems like a craft mastered after years and years, dude. And I got to give it to you on that.
I definitely learned a lot. As I said, it was the hardest thing I've ever done. But now I feel like I can do most things.
Right, exactly, man. It's just like if what doesn't kill you makes you stronger type thing, right?
Truly.
So
And
how does
killed
that?
me.
Yeah. Almost knocked you out, huh? How does the tour itself work? So are you guys all together all the time, traveling together and things like that?
Yeah. So long story short, yes, we spent most of our days all together. That's why like this whole pandemic situation was especially hard, because like our last time all seeing each other, our our company manager was telling us that, okay, we're sending you home, but we're gonna pick up the tour in 3 weeks as planned, because we were in LA at the time. So
Okay.
the plan was to reconvene in San Francisco and continue the tour as planned. But unfortunately, about 2 weeks in, we got the call from the producers saying that our show was closing permanently.
Okay.
So that was tough. Like, these people I lived with and saw just about every day for 2 years, like, will probably
Right.
never all be in the same place at once again.
That's crazy to think about.
Yeah, it was tough. It was really a tough pill to swallow. But yeah,
Yeah.
tour life, we would be with each other all the time, really. We would travel together. The company would get us flights if it was
Okay.
within a certain distance. I think if it was like under 4 hours drive, we would have tour buses. But anything further than that, we would fly. And then the company managers would handle all of that. We basically just had to show up, get on the bus at the right time, and then everything else would pretty much be taken care of. And then in terms of like housing, we got a weekly per diem to cover the costs of housing. And then if we wanted to, we could have the company managers. They always would provide 2 different hotel options, and we would have the choice of picking one of those. And then we could have roommates if we wanted to cut the cost and save some of our per diem. And then what I would often do, and a lot of my friends and cast members would do, is we would get Airbnbs.
Yeah.
Just to, kind of feel a little bit more like you're living in a place than just like being in a hotel room. And you could save a lot of money that way as well, which was nice.
Yeah, no, that's interesting, and that was like the main purpose of me asking that question, because I've never been privy to how actors travel, especially in a more broader like production, because I was assuming that either they would be like, hey, Henry, we're doing this at this time in LA, I'll be there at this time, and then you got to figure it out. But being part of a company, it's nice that they had the resources to kind of take care of you guys, because I'm sure logistically traveling would have been a pain in the ass, in addition to having to prep yourself for a role. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they took great care of us, and it was a full production contract, which means it's all of the same standards as the Broadway company. So all of the costumes, all of the lighting elements, everything is exactly the same as the Broadway company. So yeah, they took great care of us, and I mean, it was like a very well-oiled machine and a little community. They traveled like, I think, all included with like the technicians and the band members that traveled. I think there were like 70 plus of our full company. Because I mean, it truly takes a village to put on a show. You have all the cast members, but there's so many other people behind the scenes that are also there and traveling with us. So yeah, it was wild.
Cool.
It was very wild to join this like speeding train, basically, that was like already in motion. I think that was like one of the most unique parts of the whole experience, is like I was in rehearsals while like shows were happening at night, and then I ended up filling in for the cast member who was leaving. But like, it's not like you're creating something from scratch like with a lot of other projects that I've worked on. Most other projects I've worked on, it's like it's already this existing entity. I'm just joining and like making sure the show goes on.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Did and I don't remember this. Did Book of Mormon have like a pit orchestra, or like they did?
Yeah.
And they travel with you as well?
Yeah, so there were a handful of musicians, like the music director and assistant music director who play the pianos would always be there. And then I think we traveled a guitarist, a drummer, a bassist, and I think I'm blanking, but I'm pretty sure those are the 5 musicians that we traveled, and then the rest would be like local hires.
I see.
So
is there any? Go ahead, sorry.
Oh, they would have like, they'd hire like a local horns player and then like a handful of other musicians. But yeah, it was live every performance.
Wow, a lot of moving pieces, huh?
Yeah, it's wild.
Is there any rift between the musicians and the actors? Any Jets versus Sharks action going on there?
Oh, no, there's not drama. I mean, Yeah, we would go out with them just as often.
Yeah, yeah.
One of my close friends from tour was, the assistant music director. So yeah, we would all hang all the time and like share
Yeah,
Airbnbs and stuff.
for sure. Yeah, man. I like, like in orchestra, like I play the viola, right? So
Hmm.
there's always like a little bit of like, oh, like fuck you to the violas because the violins got the show or the cellos got the show. You know what I mean? So it's
Yeah.
like, it's just funny to hear. In any type of musical production, there's people who like attract a lot of attention, right?
Yeah.
And there's people who kind of are behind the scenes or they're making everything come together. Equally as important, but you know what I mean. Like, yeah, I'm sure as time goes on, you get closer, you start poking fun at each other, things like
Yeah.
that. You know what I mean? Friendly
Definitely.
play.
I mean, yeah. When you see the same people every day for
Yeah,
however many years, like it's inevitable that you'll get under each other's skin at some point. But casting does a really excellent job, specifically for the Book of Mormon. They did a really great job of hiring and like finding people that were really lovely to work with.
yeah,
Because I remember when I was pretty sure I was gonna book the job, I was like starting to get messages from previous directors that I had worked at various theaters around Chicago, being like, "Hey, Henry, the people from Book of Mormon just called me and were asking like how you were to work with and all of this," and I'm like, "Oh, sweet, I'm about to get this." But at
let's
the same time,
go.
like, it's really important to have, as with any business or profession, it's important to, be a good person and make sure
Yeah,
that you're fun to work with. Because ultimately, they want to find people that are not going to be like bringing the show to a halt with their drama.
totally.
Especially in a show that is touring, because if you're like at a sit down production doing something in New York, like you come to work and you do the show, but then you can just go home and like go back to your own life and do your own thing. Whereas on
Yeah,
tour, you really rely on each other because and especially in smaller cities and stuff like that, you're all that you have is like this community. So yeah, it was a very very unique experience.
yeah, no, 100%. And taking it a couple steps back to your audition for Book of Mormon, what does that look like? So, did you get the tip for that there was an audition like through your theater school or through some like newsletters that you subscribe to? Like, how does that work out?
So they post about it on a number of different websites. I've always used Actors Equity's website to kind of
Okay.
look at like the equity productions that are holding auditions in Chicago. But then I ended up signing with an agent shortly after graduation, and they do a lot of that work for me now,
Oh,
where they'll like
wonderful.
shoot me an email being like, "Hey, this casting director has requested to see you for this project, be it a commercial or a live theater production." And then I will look at my calendar, see if the dates work, if it's something I'm interested in, and then
Yeah.
take it from there. But yeah, for Book of Mormon specifically, like I said, I would go in anytime they came to Chicago. I think they held auditions in Chicago like once or twice a year.
Oh,
So I'd always
nice.
go in just to show I was still interested. And then my agent, when they decided they wanted to call me back for this part that was opening up, my agent kind of negotiated all of that and was like the person really communicating with the Book of Mormon people. So it kind of took the stress off of me of like making sure dates and times were all set.
Yeah.
But yeah, for Book of Mormon specifically, I went to general auditions in Chicago, and then I went to New York for a handful of callbacks. The last time I went out specifically for the swing position, and then possible principal, which is like one of the leads, cover. So I prepared all of that material. I performed it, and then for just the casting directors, and then they liked me and asked me to stay for the dance call. So we did 2 numbers from the show. One I had already known because it was like the general dance call that they hold yearly, but then the second one was a new one, so I had to learn that one on the spot. And then after that, they contacted my agent saying that they wanted to see me for a director's session, which basically was me working the principal cover material with an associate director of the show, and they gave me notes like specifically for what they expect for that specific track. So I worked with them for about half an hour on the material, and then the day after that, I had the final callback in front of the producers of the show. And then I just crossed my fingers and hoped for the best.
Well done, man.
Yeah, and then a couple weeks later, I found out that those directors were starting to get messages from the people, and I was like, oh, okay, this might happen. And then my agent called me and put the entire office on the phone, and they were like, congratulations, you booked it. And I like immediately started crying because I've been working on it for so long. So yeah, that
must have been emotional.
Yeah, huge emotional roller coaster. And then the kicker was that I started 5 days later.
Oh man.
They're like, hey, you got the job. Can you be there next Monday?
Right.
I'm like, how do I pack my life to live on the road? And thankfully my lease was up at the end of the month, and it worked out perfectly. That
it was meant to be, right?
Yeah, I didn't have to still pay rent or anything like that. It was kind of ideal. But I mean, it was a big life change and not a lot of time to prep for it. And
very crazy.
Yeah, 2 years of doing long distance was not ideal, but Haley and I made it work. Being on the road, it's cool, but it's got its challenges for sure.
Yeah, man, a nice story in, resiliency and persistence and things of that sort. I can dig it 100%, man. Those are the things I'm looking to discuss with people on. And my gears are moving, man. So pardon me if I'm geeking out here a little bit, because I don't have any insight into the world that you live in, that you live and breathe every day. Yeah. So one thing I'm interested, currently, I work in a marketing type role, right? And a lot of what I do is taking what, an executive leader will say and making it come to life, right? And that's a talent in itself, I'll say, right? Because what I really like in a world of automation and technology and things like that is the human component of it, right? We cannot forget that we're human beings and that we have this intangible skill that you can't really put your finger on, right? So when you had mentioned that the notion of how a casting director, when you're going for an audition, is saying, hey Henry, this is what I expect for this audition. This is what I expect from whatever, right? What is going on in your mind where you're like, okay, he said some words. He might say, I need someone who's animated, someone who's jovial, someone who's, what have you. What is going on in your mind where you're like, okay, I can pinpoint what he's trying to say and connect the dots and make that come to life in a scene?
Yeah, I think, there's so many, my entire career and acting training, that's when a lot of the skills that I learned in acting school really kick in. Just specific, if they're asking for a specific take, or they want a line delivered in a certain way, you do everything you can to justify that inflection or that emotion on that line in a way that is truthful for the character that you're creating. I think it's just honestly, training like really kicks in, and you figure out a way to justify what they're asking you and make it truthful, and yeah, just do your best to give them what they want at the end of the day. I've been asked so many like ridiculous things in the room, and sometimes like they're asking for like outlandish takes on things just to see if you can take notes and give them what they want.
Okay.
That wasn't specifically the case in Book of Mormon. But yeah, I mean, you never really know what to expect having a one-on-one with a director. Every director asks for different things and runs their auditions differently, so you kind of just got to be able to roll with the punches a little bit. I think that's one of the things that I really love about acting and theater. Some people really stress out and hate auditions, but I love it. I've trained my brain to like. It's almost like I get such a high off of that in the moment, like make it or break it scenario where it's like, okay, this person's asking me for this specific thing on this next take. How can I do it better, the best that I can, but better than anyone else as well?
Yeah.
So yeah, and you know, art is up to interpretation. You know, there's no one right or wrong answer. I think that's something that's really important to keep in mind as well. It's like at the end of the day, you may not give them what they're looking for, but there's only so much that is in your control.
Right.
So you really can't stress about those things, like especially for film and TV. Like I've been auditioning for so many commercials and like TV projects that are shooting here in Chicago, and a lot of times it'll be like, oh, you're 2 inches too tall, or your eyes are the wrong color, or your hair is too curly, or like for whatever reason. There's so many things that are out of your control. But if you rely on your training, then you can really hone in on, you know, doing what is in your control to the best of your ability.
Yeah, no, I'm jiving with it, right? It's like your locus of control, right? You can only worry about that, and everything else is just gonna stress you out for no reason.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you're a trained musician, you're a trained actor, bring that to the table. And if that doesn't resonate, maybe it wasn't meant to be, but you're gonna do the postmortem, take your notes, and come back stronger, right? Like that's pretty much what it's all about.
Yeah.
That's really cool, man. That's really cool. No, I appreciate you sharing all these things, man. It's really cool to give me a little insight into your world.
Yeah.
And as you prep for your move, you know, I know New York is really really big in like on the Broadway scene and things like that. But you since you did mention you were out in, you know, the Los Angeles area, San Fran and things like that. So why not LA, and why New York?
So my specific skill set and training is mostly based on live performance and musical theater, and Broadway and New York is really like the mecca for live performance. LA is great if you want to do film and TV, but they don't have really a super great live theater scene or community. So yeah, in terms of like
That makes sense.
what my skill set is, New York makes the most sense. I really do like LA, and if I were to, you know, book some more film and TV gigs and build up enough of a resume that I felt comfortable moving to that market, I would certainly not shy away from that if I were to start booking more film and TV, but thus far I've had the most success in my career doing live theater, and honestly it's what I enjoy the most as well.
I'd love to hear it.
Performing live in a room with other people is really my jam.
Yeah.
So yeah, New York feels like the right move.
Yeah, so diving deeper into those two, like maybe disparities as two ends. what are some stark differences in like the type of acting? Like I know Broadway, for lack of a better phrase, is very, animated. It's very showy. It's very Broadway, like, if you will, right? And there are stark differences from that I would see, right? But what are some of the differences in the way, like, an actor approaches Broadway versus, a TV or a commercial?
Yeah. Acting for film and acting on camera is a lot smaller, a lot more specific. A lot of times it involves you, not moving your head at all, but just like emoting with your eyes, if that makes sense.
Sure. Yeah.
Whereas for live performance and theater, sometimes you'll be performing at upwards of 2,000 seat houses, and like those little eye movements aren't going to read to the back of the house.
Totally.
So it needs to be a
Wow.
little bit broader. Yeah, and then there's the whole singing and dancing element that is
Right.
pretty unique. I mean, there are musical theater movie adaptations as well, but
Yeah.
again, that is, aside from like the song and dance numbers, it's it's a different acting style for sure.
No, totally. And the whole emoting with your eyes thing is very, very true. And the way you put it was what resonated really well, because, um like, if you think about an actor like Jake Gyllenhaal, right? He does a lot of that.
Mm-hmm.
And he just by, like, when something heavy happens in a scene, right away you can see his eyes just like adjust to like the emotion of the scene, And to your point, when I went to see Hamilton, where I was sitting, like, there'd be no way I would be able to see a facial expression, like,
Yeah.
from the balcony, right? It's like it has to be a more animated gesture, right? It's got to be something a little bit more broad, like you were saying. But you never think about those things, right? And they're almost two different worlds, like you're saying right now.
It really is. I mean, there are various acting techniques for, performing live versus acting on camera. And, at the end of the day, good acting is good acting. If you're able
Yeah.
to animate and really live in a character like that, that does reach across both aspects of performance. But it's definitely a different skill and a different like muscle to flex and work on. I definitely have, as I said, I have more experience doing live theater,
Yeah.
but I've done a handful of commercials and TV shows here and there as well, and I certainly love it. I would love to do
Yeah.
more of it. It's just it's a it's it's incredibly competitive. I mean, all of it is, but
Totally.
I feel like yeah, I don't know. I feel like I have a little bit more of an edge with my live performance and the opportunities I've kind of had and made for myself.
Yeah, no doubt, man, no doubt. And it just seems like it just seems like so much fun, dude. Like, it seems like it's such a good time prepping for a role. I know it's not all like frills and dazzle and things like that. There's a lot of back end work, but, like, it just seems, I don't know, like, I'm just trying to relate it to what I do at work. And, I give client presentations, and I have to bring a certain version of myself to every conversation, right? Like, there's certain clients that they don't want the pomp and frills, right? They don't want the bells and whistles on things. Like, they want you to get right to it, and you have to read that without them saying that. You have to kind of just jump right in.
Mm-hmm.
And by body language and things like that, you really have to adjust on the fly. And those are the skills that I love to polish, because, again, it's something that only a human being can do. It just separates you from someone else. Like, the version of Henry that you are giving me right now is something only Henry McGinniss can do, right? No one else can mock it. And that, to me, is such a profound quality of human beings.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude. So, again, I appreciate all the knowledge sharing here. So, like,
So, I'm thinking about your comment on the resume, right? So, like, if you take a look at my resume, it's really like, it's based on my work experience, right? Advocate Healthcare, Northwestern, Optum, whatever it might be, right? So, what is an actor's resume similar? Like, so I know you'll probably be like, okay, I was in, this production, and maybe I played this role. Is that all it is, or is there something more to it, descriptive wise?
Yeah, so it's generally a breakdown of like the projects that you've worked on. So I have like one section that is theater, broken up into like Broadway National Tour, regional shows,
Okay.
Chicago specific, and then I have a section that shows my film, TV, and commercial credits. And then at the bottom, I have like my training, where I went to school, what specific acting teachers and coaches I've worked with. Yeah, it's basically showing like these are the places and the people that I've worked with. And then at the very bottom, you have a list of your special skills, which is like I can do a round off back handspring, or
Nice.
yeah, specific accents you can do. But yeah, I mean, it's very theater specific. It's not something I would take to like any other kind of job interview.
Right.
But it is a very good tool for showing people like that you can do this thing that you're being asked to do, and you're trying to convince them that you do well.
Yeah. Still can do that handspring, huh?
I actually took that off my resume. I had to. I got asked to do it at a callback once, and I hadn't done it in like months or a year, and I was like, okay, I'm either gonna
Let's
break
go.
my neck, or I'm gonna book this show, and I booked the show.
My man, dude. No, I just remember it because like back in the day, I remember like a couple times, like at soccer practice or after scoring a goal, you would bust out that handspring.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, all right, 20 years later, Henry's still doing that handspring, man.
Yeah, I don't know. As you said earlier, we're closer to 30 these days, so I'm not pulling out the handspring anymore, just for looking out for myself.
Yeah, man, dude. I don't know about you, bro, but like as I'm getting older, it's like, dude, like if you take, I have all these, like, you see all those like pills over there. I got like apple cider vinegar, Centrum, fiber, dude. It's like,
Yeah.
man, all these things come into play now, and I don't know if I need them or anything like that. I just know I feel better when I take those supplements.
Yeah.
But we've all seen those old people that got like a tub of medications.
Uh-huh.
I feel like that every single morning, man. I just
Yeah.
feel like
Yeah, I got
you doing that
seasonal
stuff.
allergies now. I'm like, what is that about? Why are my eyes so itchy?
Dude, 100%. Like, snot flowing from all directions, dude. It's like,
not what
leave me alone, bro.
It's not what I signed up for.
Yeah, man. No, but you know what, man? I'm having a great conversation with you. We're right up on the hour here. So like, is my main thing is, are you okay with me like posting this and like tagging you on it on social media and everything like that?
Yeah, most definitely.
All right, I just like to ask a question, you know what I mean? Because I know, we all have our own agendas and things like that. But, I'm happy to, like, once you send me over the file and a headshot or something like that, if you're okay with it.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I didn't send that yet. I will.
You know what? How dare you, Henry? Just kidding.
I know. I was actually just in the suburbs yesterday, so I'm finally back and have my computer and all of those files. But I'm singing at this virtual show choir camp,
Yeah?
which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
'Cause I'm sure you remember, but Wabanzi had a pretty big show choir.
Oh, pep assemblies, dude? That's Henry's time to shine.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
So, Mark Myers, who was our choir director, kind of
Wow.
connected with me last year because it was the first time Show Choir Camps of America was unable to be in person, so they were trying to figure out how they could do it virtually, and they got 4 singers, bass, tenor, alto, soprano, and we're recording all of the songs so the kids have something to sing along to, and then the choir directors will teach the music, but we'll be the demonstrators. So they'll be like, and then tenors sing this specific line on this bar, and then like I would sing it, and then the kids at home would sing along. But it's pretty cool.
Wow, that's awesome, man. It's a cool way to give back, you know,
Yeah.
and connect with Mark again. I remember him, dude.
Yeah.
Like he had like a spiky like little haircut, like kind of
Yeah.
like a beard situation going on.
The man's a legend. He's the reason I do what I do today, like truly.
Yes, sir.
So yeah, it like you said, it feels good to give back, but it's also just fun to be, you know, making music live with people again.
Yeah, totally, man. And you know, as we wrap up, dude, what's something you would tell someone back in like an 8th grader who kind of has an inkling for who wants to scratch that itch towards music? What I would say to them is do it. You know, go forward with it. Like if it's something you even remotely love, pursue it, because you know there's gonna be things shoved down your throat as you get older. But one thing I do know is that, like, I don't know if and I don't want to get too deep into this, but, you know, I don't know if I'm religious or not, but the closest thing I have to religion is music, you know, and I can say that for sure.
Yeah.
So that's what I would tell someone. What would you advise them on?
Yeah, I would definitely tell them to chase whatever makes them happier than anything else. And if that happens to be music, great. You know, life is too short to possibly, you know, not make the decisions that you're going to regret later. Ultimately, I just live my life in a way that I never want to look back and be like, oh man, what if I made like that career choice, or what if I did that specific thing, or like what if I followed that whatever it may be that is like calling to my heart. And for me that was musical theater and live performance. And yeah, there are definitely ups and downs, but whenever I do get to do a performance and do get to do a show, it never ever feels like I'm working. It feels like
Wonderful.
I'm just doing what I love. So yeah, I would definitely I would definitely recommend chasing and pursuing what makes you happy, whether that's sports or music. Specifically with music, I would encourage them to do everything they can to hone in and better themselves in their craft. But yeah, I would just say go for it. Life's too short to say, oh, what would it have been like if I auditioned for that show or that choir or that production. Go for it.
Totally, man. And that's gold. No, that's gold. I appreciate you sharing that. And, you know, dude, I know I'm going to see you in something big one day, out in New York or wherever it might be. And I'll be there for it, dude. You know, I'm a big Broadway fan, but that aside, man, I'm happy to see that you're chasing your passions, man. You're smiling a lot, dude. You look like you're having fun, dude. So that energy is definitely carrying through. So I can't wait for you to make it big, man.
Thank you.
And I'm going to come see you. I'm going to come see you, bro. So, hey, I just want to say thank you again for taking the time, dude. I know it's busy schedules, auditions, and things of that sort, but I appreciate you making the time for me.
Of course, man. Thanks for reaching out. It's great to catch up.
Yeah, man. And hopefully we can connect soon, maybe live one of these days. We can just like have lunch, dude, have coffee. You can bring the girl. You can meet Alyssa as well.
I would love that.
We have a little double date action, man. That'd be fun.
Yeah,
yes,
we need to get it in before Hay and I move.
Definitely. So, you know, I'll go ahead and do all the stuff, you know, that I do on my side with the audio files and stuff like that. I'll get that going. I'll send that your way, and then maybe we can put some on the books.
Sounds great, man.
All right, my man. Well, hey, thanks again. I appreciate it. Tell Haley I said hello, and then we'll talk soon, man.
Sounds good. Have a good night.
Take it easy, brother.
Bye.